It's our second day of class, and we've just given our first speech of the semester. Do you guys remember that day? I do. I will always remember that day because of something that happened to me. I was sitting in this corner, kind of by myself, because we pulled the chairs into a circle, and I was taking notes. Professor Clausen was talking about some of the pros and some of the cons of our speeches, and I'm writing this down, and then she looks straight at me and she says, some of you need to work on being a little bit more interesting.
Oh no!
And to me, I took that as, some of you are a little bit boring. And I thought, no, not me. She must have been looking, okay, I'm the only one here, but I'm a great speaker. Then I thought a little bit more on my speech and past speeches, and I thought, you know what, I could use some practice. She told us that we were going to be giving a speech in class about something we could do to become a more well-rounded speaker, and I thought, this is my chance. I looked up some great information, and it's really been a benefit to me. It's also going to be very beneficial to you guys as we're all trying to become better speakers. I'm going to give you 2 ways which will aid with your practice of giving a speech. The first is practicing your preparation, and the next is practicing your delivery. Beginning with your preparation, of course, keyword outline. According to our book, Public Speaking, a keyword outline is an extemporaneous speech, which means that it is not written fully out, but it's not memorized either. It actually looks something like this. Professor Clausen mentioned that instead of just having it on one page and having it small, you can make it your own. That's what I've done. This is an example of that. I've made it large enough that I can still walk the room and I can see this paper from here. I also did some colors, not too much, but just enough, so that I could be able to make sure not to skip a point that I really wanted to touch on. Once you have your keyword outline and you've made it your own, you want to acknowledge your strengths and your weaknesses. What are some strengths that you guys have or someone else in the class has when it comes to giving your speeches?
I'm very funny.
Funny. That is great. That is very important. Anyone else have a strength or someone in the class? Maybe something that Adam did. I noticed that he was good at actually moving around, having hand gestures. It's important when you're writing your speech and preparing for your speech to actually acknowledge your strengths. Sometimes we think, oh, just got to think about my weaknesses. But if you know your strengths, for instance, if you know you're great at telling stories like Johnny is, then put that in there. If it's applicable, then it's better for the audience to be captivated into your speech. After you know what some of your strengths are, you also want to focus on your weaknesses. Does anyone have a weakness that they have that maybe they want to share with the class when it comes to giving speeches?
They talk too fast.
Talk too fast. Okay. That's something that's good to focus on.
I feel like I'm talking straight to myself into a mirror.
Okay, talking into a mirror. Okay. It's really important to acknowledge our weaknesses, and sometimes we can feel overwhelmed when we're trying to practice them. But I would suggest that you practice it in multiple ways, not just in front of a mirror or not just when you're trying to time yourself giving your speech, but say, for instance, if you have a hard time with eye contact. What you could do is start with eye contact with your friends when you're just talking in a conversation. Then you can make eye contact with your professors when they're talking to you, with strangers when they're asking you a question. So by the time you get up and give your speech, you're more comfortable with it. And so you're able to do better with some of your weaknesses. Now that we know how to utilize a well-written outline, and we also have knowledge of our personal strengths and weaknesses, this can help us aid in practicing how to actually deliver our speech. So speech delivery, we want to begin with using our space. There's a book called Intercultural Communication in Context, and this talks about proxemics, which is pretty much just a study of space. And it talks about how space and using your space, how close you are when you're speaking to somebody, is nonverbal communication. And it aids in retention and people able to focus on your speech. Professor Clausen told us this is where we're giving our speech, except for a few people who are outside. This is where we've been. And yet, when we get up here, it is so hard not to just stay in this one spot and just stare down and look up and look like this. So I thought, okay, how can I actually use my space? So I practiced at my kitchen table, and I set out my outline in 3 pieces, and I made it big enough so that I could walk the space and I could feel comfortable in front of you guys because I've actually practiced it. Once you practice in your space, you want to practice giving your speech. This is the most important. You want to go over your speech multiple times with everything that you've already thought about as far as your outline goes and your strengths and weaknesses. Now, with our outline, we know that we actually talk about each main point 4 times. So I would recommend that you go over your speech at least 4 times before you give it. And you do it in similar venue. And you also want to do it in a variety of audiences. Because every audience that you give your speech in is a different climate. So it can help you get over those weaknesses. That's actually something that Professor Clausen had mentioned. So in summation, we want to prepare for our speech with a keyword outline. And that frees you to practice your strengths and your weaknesses. Once you have those down, you want to practice delivering your speech in different venues, also in front of a variety of audiences. And this will help you to get over your strengths, or to use your strengths and to get over your weaknesses. This can help you go from maybe being boring to a little bit more interesting. And it can also help you to become a more well-rounded speaker, because you just want to practice. That's the main thing. And practice makes perfect. Thanks.